The old man hit the floor hard. His worn brown jacket twisted beneath him as his groceries scattered across the polished marble tiles. A can of soup rolled under the checkout counter. A loaf of bread landed in a puddle of spilled orange juice. And standing above him with her designer heels clicking impatiently was a 24-year-old woman named Veronica Ashford, daughter of real estate mogul Richard Ashford, heiress to a fortune she had never earned and clearly did not deserve. She did not apologize. She did not offer her hand. She looked down at the man like he was an insect she had accidentally stepped on. "Maybe next time you will move faster," she said, loud enough for everyone in the store to hear. The old man's name was Harold Eugene Mitchell. He was 73 years old. His hands were rough from decades of work. His back was slightly hunched, not from weakness, but from years of bending over blueprints, machines, and problems that most people could not even begin to understand. He wore clothes from a thrift store. His watch was a simple Timex. His shoes had holes near the soles. No one in that grocery store had any idea who he really was, but they were about to find out. It had started 15 minutes earlier in the produce section. Harold had been carefully selecting apples. He liked the Honeycrisp variety. They reminded him of the orchards near his childhood home in upstate New York, back when life was simpler, back when his mother would bake pies every Sunday afternoon. He picked up each apple, examined it, turned it slowly in his calloused hands. That was when he first heard her voice. "Oh my God, can you believe this place?" Veronica was speaking into her phone, her voice sharp and nasal, cutting through the quiet hum of the store. "I had to come here because my usual market is being renovated. This is where poor people shop. I literally cannot." She was wearing a bright red designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was perfectly styled, blonde highlights cascading over her shoulders. Her nails were long, painted gold, and they clicked against her phone screen as she typed. Behind her walked a young man in a grey suit. He carried her purse. Her assistant, apparently. He looked exhausted. Harold glanced at her briefly, then returned to his apples. He had learned long ago not to waste energy on people who did not deserve it. But Veronica had noticed him looking. "Excuse me?" she said, stopping in her tracks. "Did you just stare at me?" Harold looked up, surprised. "I beg your pardon?" "You were staring at me. That is incredibly rude." "Ma'am, I was simply selecting apples." "Do not call me ma'am. I am not old." She wrinkled her nose. "And could you maybe shop somewhere else? You smell like mothballs and failure." A woman nearby gasped. A stock boy stopped what he was doing. Harold felt his face flush, not with embarrassment, but with something deeper, something that had been dormant for many years, but he said nothing. He simply placed his apples in his basket and walked away. He had learned long ago that some battles were not worth fighting, at least not immediately. Veronica Ashford had been born into privilege. Her father, Richard Ashford, had built a real estate empire in the 1980s, buying properties across the eastern seaboard, developing luxury condominiums, and cultivating a reputation as one of the most ruthless businessmen in New York. But Richard Ashford had a secret that even his own daughter did not know. 30 years ago, when Richard was just starting out, he had been nobody, a kid from Queens with big dreams and empty pockets. He had borrowed money from dozens of investors, promising returns he was not sure he could deliver. And when his first major project nearly collapsed, when the banks were ready to foreclose and his investors were threatening lawsuits, one man had stepped in. One man had believed in him when no one else would. That man had given Richard Ashford $3 million. No contract, no interest, just a handshake and a simple request. "Pay it forward someday," the man had said. "Help someone who needs it. That is all I ask." Richard Ashford had never forgotten that moment. It had shaped everything he became, but his daughter had never learned that lesson. She had been given everything, and she appreciated nothing. In the checkout line, the trouble escalated. There were only 2 registers open, and the lines were long. Harold stood patiently, his small basket of groceries resting against his hip. Ahead of him were a young mother with 2 children, an elderly couple holding hands, and a teenager buying energy drinks. Behind him, Veronica arrived like a storm. "This is ridiculous," she announced to no one in particular. "I have been in this store for 20 minutes. Do they not have express lanes for people who actually have places to be?" Her assistant shifted uncomfortably. "Miss Ashford, I believe there is an express lane on the other side of I am not walking to the other side of anything. These people should let me go first. She raised her voice. Excuse me? Hello? Can someone let me cut in line? I have a spa appointment in 45 minutes. No one responded. The young mother looked away. The elderly couple pretended not to hear. The teenager put in his earbuds. Veronica's face reddened with fury. That was when she spotted Harold, the old man in the worn jacket, the man who had dared to look at her in the produce section. He was standing quietly, not looking at her, not engaging. He was the perfect target. You, she said, pointing at him. Old man, let me go ahead of you. You obviously have nowhere to be. Harold turned slowly. His eyes met hers. They were calm, patient, almost sad. I am sorry, he said quietly, but I was here first. I am sure the line will move quickly. Do you know who I am? Veronica stepped closer. Her perfume was overwhelming, sweet and chemical. My father is Richard Ashford, as in Ashford Towers, Ashford Plaza, Ashford Estates. He could buy this entire store and everyone in it. That may be true, Harold said, but it does not change the fact that I was here first. For a moment something flickered in Veronica's eyes, something dangerous. She was not used to being told no. She was not used to being challenged by anyone, let alone an old man in a thrift store jacket. Move, she said. Now. No. The word hung in the air. And then Veronica Ashford did something that would change her life forever. She pushed him, both hands against his chest, hard, violent, without warning. Harold stumbled backward. His basket flew from his hands, his feet tangled beneath him. And then he was falling, hitting the hard marble floor with a sound that made everyone in the store wince. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then Veronica laughed. Maybe that will teach you to respect. Your betters, she said, pulling out her phone. Oh my God, I have to post this. The look on his face was priceless. She began recording. But something strange was happening. The store manager, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, had emerged from the back office. She had seen the whole thing on the security monitors, and her face was pale, very, very pale. She rushed toward the checkout area, her heels clicking frantically against the floor. She pushed past Veronica, past the shocked customers, and knelt beside the old man on the floor. Mr. Mitchell, she said, her voice trembling. Mr. Mitchell, are you all right? I am so sorry. I am so incredibly sorry. Veronica lowered her phone. Wait, you know this homeless person? Patricia looked up at her with an expression that Veronica had never seen directed at her before. It was not fear. It was not admiration. It was disgust. Miss, Patricia said slowly, do you have any idea who you just assaulted? Some old nobody who does not. Know his place. Patricia closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there were tears forming. This man, she said, is Harold Eugene Mitchell. The name meant nothing to Veronica, but it meant everything to everyone else in that store. The teenager with the energy drinks looked up from his phone, his mouth falling open. The elderly couple gasped. The young mother covered her mouth with her hand. Harold Mitchell, Patricia continued, her voice shaking, is the founder and former CEO of Mitchell Technologies. He invented the microprocessor that powers every smartphone on this planet. He holds over 400 patents. He has donated more than $3 billion to charity over the past 20 years. She paused, letting the words sink in. He is also the man who gave your father the money to start his business 30 years ago. Without Harold Mitchell, there would be no Ashford Empire. There would be no Ashford Towers. There would be no Ashford anything. Veronica's phone slipped from her fingers. It clattered against the floor, the recording still running. That is impossible, she whispered. But no one faked the way Patricia was looking at him. No one faked the recognition in the eyes of everyone around them. No one faked the small, sad smile that crossed Harold Mitchell's weathered face as he slowly, painfully rose to his feet. He reached into the inside pocket of his worn jacket and he pulled out a black card. Not just any black card. The Centurion card. The invitation-only American Express card reserved for individuals with a minimum net worth of $100 million. The card that most people would never see in their entire lives. Harold looked at it for a moment, then looked at Veronica. I shop here, he said quietly, because I like to remember where I came from. I wear these clothes because they are comfortable and because I learned long ago that what a person wears tells you nothing about who they are. He paused. Your father understood that once. I wonder if he still does. Veronica was shaking now. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled at her sides. Her designer dress suddenly felt cheap and ridiculous. "I did not know," she stammered. "I swear, I did not know who you were." Harold nodded slowly. "And that," he said, "is exactly the problem." What happened next spread across the internet like wildfire. The video that Veronica had been recording, the video she thought would make her look powerful and important, was still running when she dropped her phone. It captured everything: her assault, her cruel words, and the devastating moment when she realized she had just attacked one of the most influential and respected philanthropists in American history. Within 24 hours, the video had been viewed over 50 million times. News outlets around the world picked up the story. Hashtags like "Rich Girl Gets What She Deserves" and "Do You Know Who He Is" trended on every social media platform. But Harold Mitchell did not press charges. He did something far more powerful. 3 days after the incident, Harold called a press conference. Reporters from every major network crowded into a small community center in the Bronx. Cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Harold stood at a simple wooden podium, wearing the same worn jacket, the same simple watch, the same kind eyes that had looked at Veronica in that grocery store. "I have been asked many times over the past few days what I want to happen to the young woman who pushed me," he began. "People want me to sue her. They want me to destroy her family's business. They want revenge." He shook his head. "But revenge has never interested me. What interests me is change." He paused, looking out at the sea of reporters. "I have spoken with Richard Ashford, a man I helped many years ago. He is devastated by his daughter's behavior. More importantly, he is determined to make things right. Together, we have decided to create the Mitchell Ashford Foundation for Dignity. This foundation will provide scholarships to young people from underprivileged backgrounds. It will fund job training programs, literacy initiatives, and community development projects in neighborhoods that have been forgotten by the wealthy and powerful." He smiled softly. "And there is one more thing. Veronica Ashford has agreed to work at this foundation, not as a figurehead, not as a celebrity spokesperson, but as a volunteer. She will spend the next 2 years working directly with the people she has been taught to look down upon. She will learn their names. She will hear their stories. She will discover that dignity is not something you are born with. It is something you earn by giving it to others." The room erupted with questions, but Harold raised his hand for silence. "I do not tell you this to humiliate her further. I tell you this because I believe in second chances. I was given one 60 years ago, when I was a poor kid from Brooklyn, with nothing but dreams. Someone believed in me when no one else would, and that belief changed my life." He looked directly into the cameras. "Veronica Ashford made a terrible mistake, but she is 24 years old. She has time to become a different person. The question is whether she has the courage to try." 6 months later, Veronica stood in a soup kitchen in downtown Manhattan. She was not wearing designer clothes. Her nails were unpainted. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and an apron stained with tomato soup. She was ladling food into bowls and handing them to people who lined up for a hot meal. Old men with weathered faces, young mothers with tired eyes, veterans who had been forgotten by the country they served. At first she had hated it. Every moment felt like punishment. She resented the work. She resented the people. She resented Harold Mitchell for not just letting her disappear. But something had started to change. It began with small moments. An old woman who thanked her with tears in her eyes. A child who drew her a picture of a flower. A veteran named Marcus who told her about his time in Vietnam, about the friends he lost, about the nightmares that still haunted him 50 years later. These were not the nobodies she had been raised to dismiss. These were people with stories, with dreams, with dignity. And slowly, painfully, Veronica began to see them, really see them. One evening, as she was closing up the soup kitchen, she found Harold Mitchell waiting outside. He looked the same as always. Worn jacket, simple watch, kind eyes. "You are doing well," he said. Veronica did not know what to say. 6 months ago, she would have screamed at him. She would have blamed him for ruining her life. But now, standing in the cold evening air with aching feet and calloused hands, she felt something different. She felt grateful. "I do not understand," she said quietly. "I treated you horribly. I pushed you to the ground in front of everyone. Why did you not destroy me? You could have, easily." Harold was silent for a long moment. "Because destroying you would have been easy." he finally said, and easy is rarely right. He paused. When I was young, I made many mistakes. I hurt people. I was arrogant. I thought money and success made me better than others. And then I lost everything. Every penny, every friend, every reason to believe that I deserved to be here. His eyes grew distant. A woman named Eleanor saved me. She ran a small bakery in Brooklyn. I wandered in one day, hungry and desperate and ready to give up. She gave me a meal. She gave me a job sweeping floors. And over time, she gave me something even more valuable. She gave me perspective. He looked at Veronica. Eleanor taught me that every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. She taught me that kindness is not weakness. She taught me that the measure of a person is not what they have, but how they treat those who have nothing. Veronica felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I was so horrible, she whispered, to so many people, for so many years. Yes, Harold said, you were. But the past cannot be changed. It can only be learned from. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. The question is not who you were. The question is who you are becoming. 1 year later, Veronica Ashford stood at a podium of her own. The Mitchell Ashford Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. 50,000 scholarships had been awarded. 12 community centers had been built. Job training programs had helped over 20,000 people find employment. And Veronica was no longer a volunteer. She was the foundation's executive director. The audience was filled with donors, politicians, journalists, and celebrities. But Veronica was not looking at them. She was looking at the people in the back of the room, the scholarship recipients, the community center volunteers, the men and women she had served soup to, whose names she now knew, whose stories she now carried in her heart. 2 years ago, she began, I was a different person. I was cruel. I was selfish. I judged people by what they wore, where they lived, and how much money they had. I believed that my family's wealth made me special, made me better. She paused, her voice catching. I was wrong. About everything. She took a deep breath. The man I pushed to the ground in a grocery store turned out to be the most important person I have ever met. Not because of his wealth, not because of his accomplishments, but because of his grace, his patience, his belief that even the worst of us can change. She looked toward the front row, where Harold Mitchell sat with a small smile on his face. Harold taught me that dignity is not given, it is recognized. Every human being has it, regardless of their circumstances. Our job, as people who have been blessed with resources and opportunities, is to see that dignity, to honor it, to protect it. She wiped her eyes. I cannot undo the harm I have caused, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to balance the scales. I can work every day to recognize the dignity in every person I meet. I can teach my children, when I have them, that the measure of a human being has nothing to do with money or status or power. She stepped back from the podium. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this foundation, and thank you, Harold, for showing me that it is never too late to become the person you were meant to be. The applause was thunderous, but Veronica did not hear it. She was looking at Harold Mitchell, who had risen from his seat. He walked slowly toward her, arms open, and for the first time in her life, Veronica Ashford did something her old self never would have done. She hugged an old man in a worn jacket, in front of 1,000 cameras, and she did not care who was watching. The rich girl who pushed the old man in the grocery store. Line became the woman who built schools in forgotten neighborhoods. The spoiled heiress who measured people by their price tags became the leader who measured success by how many lives were changed. And Harold Mitchell, the billionaire who dressed like a nobody and shopped where poor people shopped, continued to remind everyone he met that appearances mean nothing. Because in the end, it was never about the black card. It was never about the money or the power or the recognition. It was about something far more valuable. It was about respect. It was about dignity. It was about the simple revolutionary act of seeing another human being as worthy of kindness. And that, Harold Mitchell knew, was worth more than all the billions in the world. If you were shocked by what this rich girl did, do not forget to subscribe to this channel for more unbelievable stories just like this one. And now tell me in the comments, did this girl deserve the lesson she got? I will read every single comment. And respond to the best ones.